Here's something that I'm sure has happened to you as a photographer, may it be professionally, on social media, or wherever you put your photos. You've probably already experienced liking your photo so much but not getting the same reaction from your audience. May this be people who see your work online, people who look at your portfolio, or even your own clients. In this video, let's talk about one crucial step that you should do in curating your photos. Here is one piece of truth that we should all accept to be able to be better artists, to be able to connect to our audiences better, and to be able to be more successful in creating images that work for our clients. And that is the fact that there is always a huge gap between how we see our own photos and how other people see our photos. There will always be that gap. That is because we have so much more information about the photos, about how we took them, about the things that inspired us to take them, about the steps that we had to take to be able to create them and turn them into something that other people can see. These things cannot ever be seen by the people who view our photos. Yes, there are people who are part of the process that create that photo, but ultimately you want to be able to connect to the people who have no idea how the photo is made, who have no idea about the backstory of how the photo was taken. There will always be that gap, and the only way to bridge that gap is for you to be the one to adjust. I have to be the one to adjust to my audience and make sure that what they see from my photos should be at least good enough to make impact. If the impact is only coming from my side, from my own subjective view of the photo, and it's not coming into their side, then there is something missing. You might be overly biased towards your own photos, and that is actually absolutely natural. The problem is if you are taking the photos to be appreciated by other people or to be consumed by other people, then of course you have to consider their own perspective. You have to consider their own appreciation of the photo. You have to consider basically the emotional process and the psychological processes that they go through when they view your photo to be able to give them the satisfaction or at the very least get them thinking about the image. Now don't get me wrong, if you're taking photos for yourself, to express yourself, to practice, to simply create for yourself, then absolutely, just go and do what you are doing. But what I'm saying is that if you are creating photos that are also for the consumption of other people, such as your audience, no matter how small or big they are, then you have to consider their perspective, you have to consider their own reaction to the images that you take. This crucial step is actually you proofreading the image before it is seen by other people. This step is actually done by not just by photographers, not just by visual artists. I, as a writer, do this to everything I write because I need to make sure that what I'm saying is coming across the right way to the audience that reads my articles. And this is the same way with photography. Even musicians do this. They make sure to listen to whatever they recorded with the most neutral speakers or headphones that they have to make sure that whatever they want to be there is there, and whatever they don't want to be heard there is not heard. They want to make sure that there is an amount of precision to what they have in the recording. And in the same way, you want to do this in your photos. It's just that doing this with your photography is not just about taking a look at the photo. It's considering all the factors that come into play between how you see it yourself and how your audience sees your photos as well. There are many subjective factors that can make you biased towards your own photos. It could be your own sentimentality. This could be your fascination towards something in the photo. For example, if you just particularly love a place that is not ultimately the best iconic location in the world. And you, if you are a landscape photographer, for example, you just really love this place. You love going back there every time you can, and you've had so many memories at that place. And you somehow manage to take really good photos of this place. Now, of course, that depends on you. That depends on how well you were able to take the image. What I'm saying is that it might not be as good an image to the other people as it is to you, simply because you have your own fascination and you have your own connection with whatever is in the photo. This can also be something applicable to people who take portraits, for example. Say you took a photo of a friend or a dear relative, and for some reason you want to exhibit the photos, or you want to use it for a magazine or something. And when you publish, you also have to ask yourself, will this photo make the same impact to other people if they do not know the person in the photo? If you take away the information that is in your head about the person or the thing in the photograph, will it matter as much? If you tick all these boxes and you come up with an image that still has that impact to other people without the subjective juice that might be making you biased towards the photo, then you can be more assured of better impact and better reception, and generally a better viewer experience for your viewers of your photos. For me, as a landscape photographer, one common source of subjective juice that I have is basically the struggle of taking the image itself. As you know, being a landscape photographer, sometimes the legwork towards pressing that button and taking that photo is so much more than the actual act of taking that photo. It could be that you had to trek for hours, you had to hike, you had to camp out, or you really had to go around the city to look for a particular vantage point. The thing is, people don't know that. And if people are just looking at one image of yours and you have no way to somehow tell them the story, you have no way to write a long caption that tells the journey towards taking that image, you have no video to accompany that particular photo to tell people how hard it was to be able to get that photo, then somehow you also have to factor in the fact, of course, that they do not have a damn clue about the story behind it. And of course, these stories are always precious to us. And if you have a way to tell these stories to people, in addition to the photos that they see, then that would be good. However, it is a reality that many times we don't get the chance to tell the story beyond a single frame. So you have to make sure, just for the sake of making the same impact to the other people, you have to make sure that if you're looking at it with neutral eyes, you still have the same visual impact, you still have the same provocation of thought to the audience, even if you cannot tell them the entire story. Another possible source of this subjectivity that we have to filter out is the technical appreciation. Why? This is simply because not everyone who will view your photos are photographers. For me as a landscape photographer, for example, if I see really nice textures on an image that show me that this was really taken for a long time and the photographer basically did probably a 5-minute exposure to achieve this really nice output. That's just me. That's just me being a photographer. But the question is, if someone who doesn't know how to make that happen or how it was done, will they still have the same amount of appreciation towards the image than I do? In the same way, for example, if you are taking portraits in a studio and you really came up with this rather complicated lighting setup, the question is, are people actually going to be looking at the image trying to figure out how you lit the subject? Of course not. Most people will just look at the subject and appreciate the photo as it is. Now, that is not their fault, and that is also not your fault. But again, if you want to curate your images to the point that you want to make sure that they always have a connection to the audience, you have to factor that out. You have to be sure that even if I take all these subjective elements out of my own perception, I will still somehow take a bit of time to look at the image. I will still somehow remember the image. It will have an imprint on me as a neutral viewer. And of course, one thing that you also have to filter out are your emotions throughout the aspect of creating and curating your work. You might have a different set of emotions and a different mood on the day that you took a photo, and you have a different set of emotions and different mood on the day that you are selecting your images for a particular use. May this be for posting for social media, or selecting prints for an exhibit, or selecting images for a campaign. All of these will have varying emotions that may actually even contradict. It's important to be able to take that out and factor it out to achieve the same effect, which is neutrality. In a neutral sense, in a neutral set of eyes, will there still be impact in the photo, even if I don't have all these emotions with me? If I am just a passerby who looks at the photo, I am just someone who is looking at the magazine or browsing social media, will the photo still provoke thought? Will the photo still trigger emotions? And if the answer is yes, then of course include that particular photo in whatever you are selecting. Now, here are 3 steps that you can do to be able to curate your images better. Number 1 is, of course, simply let it take time. If you let it take time, you somehow shed some of the emotions or some of the subjectivity towards the image. So that will give you a clearer view of how the image would look in neutral eyes. The second thing that you can do is simply mindfulness. And this is very important if, for example, you need to rush and you can't take a bit of time to let the emotions be shed. What you have to do is be mindful of your own emotions, be mindful of the reasons why you probably like this particular image. Be mindful of why you even took the photo in the first place. If you are able to identify the emotions, if you are able to label the emotions that you have towards the photo, you can ask yourself if that will still apply to the viewers if they are looking at it in neutral eyes. The last thing you can do is, of course, somehow test or sample the audience that you might have. What you can do is ask for other people to criticize your photo. And in doing so, you have to make sure to diversify the audience that you are testing. You can, of course, ask fellow photographers to take a look at the photo and have them criticize. This will help you not just in that aspect, but also in the technical aspect as well. And of course, if they are giving you constructive criticism, then you should consider that. Then you should always try and see how people who are not well versed in the technicalities, how they would respond to the image. Of course, these are the people who might have more appreciation towards art, who might have more appreciation towards anything visual, but are not entirely photographers. If you are able to test this with certain people, then you will be able to also see it in that dimension. And of course, the last thing you should do is also test it in random people. Meaning, these are not photographers, these are not people who are into visual arts. And basically, you want to get the most plain reaction possible. You want to try and see the range of reactions that people might get. You want to somehow try and see the worst case scenario, how someone in the most neutral sense will see the photo. If you are able to get the person with the most neutrality to still have a significant reaction, may it be positive or negative, then you will be more assured that people are going to have a connection with your images. And there we go. I hope everything that I just said somehow made sense to you. These are things that I follow whenever I need to select photos for posting on social media, for selecting them for exhibits, and even when I have to submit pre-selected images for clients, I make it a point to do these things to be able to have a better process in selecting the photos. Of course, there will be times where you will make mistakes, you will overestimate or underestimate. There will also be times wherein it doesn't really matter. For example, for social media, what if it's not gonna get as much engagement? I mean, you can always try next time. Your other photos will make the same impact as well. And there will definitely be times wherein you will make wrong assumptions about the audience. And this is particularly true for clients. So it's still more important to actually build the right set of expectations that your clients might have from you to be able to somehow shape what you are doing to fit that better. Because again, it's more important to please your client and basically come up with whatever they really want because they hired you than to just create something that you think will be better suited to your own audience. Remember that when you're doing it for a client, it's not just about your audience, it's also about their audience and also about their own identity as, say, a brand, a company, or as people themselves. So these are things that you should always consider, but it is definitely not a perfect process. Now, if you have any questions, then do leave them down below in the comment section. Of course, my name is Nicco Valenzuela. I am a landscape and architectural photographer, and everything I make on this channel is about photography and all the realms of technicalities and subjectivity when it comes to taking photographs. And if you are into these kinds of topics, then definitely click that notification bell and hit that subscribe button so you will be notified whenever I come up with the next video. In any case, thank you for watching.